guys, it's Brea, Lynn, and welcome back to my channel. So in today's video, we're going to be talking about Matthew Perry and why these 5 people are in connection to his death. Yeah, so if you're interested, then just keep watching and you'll learn a lot more. On October 28, 2023, we unfortunately found out that the beloved actor Matthew Perry was found dead. He was unresponsive in a hot tub at his home in Pacific Palisades. When we learned the news, everyone guessed that his death was probably D-related because of Matthew Perry's past, and he publicly talked about his struggles with D's and alcohol, and he also talked about his journey into obtaining sobriety. I just want to give a quick disclaimer really quick. So instead of saying words that YouTube doesn't like, I'm just going to use the first letter. So D is for and K is for, it should be on the screen. So those are the letters that I'm substituting for the words. I think it's best to say that we all know Matthew Perry from his iconic role as Chandler Bing on the show Friends. I think we all know Chandler Bing. Friends is one of the most watched shows of all time. I'm pretty sure everyone has at least seen a clip of the show, a scene of the show, maybe even a meme from the show. It's everywhere. Everybody knows what Friends is. And if you've never seen the show, you know the show. When Matthew first started the show, he was making $22,500 an episode. By season 9 and 10, he was making $1 million per episode. That's how big this show was and how big this show blew up. To this day, they're constantly playing reruns of the show, even though the show ended in 2004. But what a lot of people didn't know at the time was that Matthew was struggling with alcoholism throughout the taping of the show. The man who brought smiles to over tens of millions of viewers every week had one of the saddest lives that we just didn't know about. Matthew said, "From an outsider's perspective, it would have seemed like I had it all. It was actually a very lonely time for me because I was suffering from alcoholism." He had started drinking when he was only 14 years old, and by the time he was 18, he was drinking regularly. Now, when I say regularly, I mean every day. In 1997, Matthew had a jet ski accident and he was injured. He went to the doctor and a doctor prescribed him lled. And this is how his addiction started, with prescription medication. Matthew said, "It wasn't my intention to have a problem with it, but from the start, I liked how it made me feel and I wanted to get more." While dealing with the addiction to alcohol and now D's, he spent millions of dollars on his habit. He attempted to get clean by putting himself in different rehabs over a period of time, but eventually he just turned back to substances. In 2000, Matthew was admitted to the hospital for pancreatitis due to alcohol and D abuse. This condition can be potentially deadly. However, this did not stop Matthew from continuing his habit. He was in and out of the hospital multiple times for ailments relating to his substance abuse. He had so many surgeries on his stomach that, it was absolutely ridiculous. This was all happening as the show was filming. He was spiraling out of control, and you could see the physical effects that this had on his body. He had lost around 20 pounds, weighing only 128 pounds. He said that at this point, he was taking up to 55 pills a day. 55 pills a day. His co-star, who played Joey Tribbiani, said that he tried to talk to Matthew about what he was seeing, but Matthew didn't have a response. His other co-star, who played Phoebe Buffay, said, "When Matthew was sick, it was not fun. We were just hopelessly standing on the sidelines. We were hurting a lot. Matthew is one of the funniest people I've ever met in my life. He's charming and hilarious. Most of our hard laughs come from Matthew." Matthew did say that he couldn't remember the 3 years of filming Friends seasons 3 to 6. Those seasons right there, because he was always hungover. He said that he had a rule that he would never drink on set, but he would always show up hungover and out of it. I guess that would make him feel better knowing that he wasn't actually drinking on set, but it still wasn't good. He said he was sleepy and shaking at work. After this, Matthew went into rehab and remained sober for a good period of time. In 2013, he founded the Perry House in Malibu. It was a sober living facility for men. He made it a passion to help others who had the same addiction as he had. In 2015, Matthew won the Music Rising Award for helping others struggling with addiction. Matthew once said, "When I die, as far as my so-called accomplishments go, it would be nice if friends were listed far behind the things I did to try to help other people." Matthew also lobbied in DC for D courts, pushing to give D offenders long-term treatment and court supervision instead of jail time. I mean, these people need help. They don't need to be punished and incarcerated. That's not going to help people who are struggling with addiction. So I completely agree with this. They need some type of guidance, some type of structure, and they need treatment. Although helping people brought him great joy, he did slip back into his addiction. In 2018, he woke up in the hospital with a ruptured colon and only had a 2% chance to live. He spent 2 weeks in a coma and 5 months in the hospital and had to use a colostomy bag for about 9 months. I mean, he was down bad. He felt like this was his rock bottom and he needed to make a drastic change. This was a big wake up call for him. He reflected on all that he went through because of his addiction, and he thought about all of the relationships he ruined. He spent over $9 million on substance abuse treatment, and he had been in and out of rehab about 15 times. Like, that's a lot of times. That's a lot. That's a lot for someone to handle, someone to go through. While I was doing research for this video, I learned that Keith Morrison, who's on Dateline, he's like, "So that's it for this episode. Have a good night," or whatever he says. That he does the true crime videos. Did you guys know that that is his stepfather? Yeah, he was in Matthew Perry's life since he was like 12 years old. Isn't that crazy? Matthew tried really hard throughout the years to get sober, but unfortunately, with the news that has just recently came out, we all know that the substances won the fight. On October 28th, 2023 at 4:07 p.m., Matthew was found in a standalone hot tub, unalived, in his Los Angeles home. He was only 54 years old. His death was puzzling because what people thought they would find, they didn't find. They're expecting to find D's and stuff and, him looking like he just like OD'd and whatnot, but that's not what was at the scene. Also, Matthew didn't have any signs of a heart attack or a stroke, but foul play was not suspected in his unaliving. After his autopsy was concluded, we learned that Matthew had high levels of K in his system and likely fell unconscious and went underwater. His cause of death was acute effect of K with coronary artery disease, drowning, and buprenorphine. But the levels in his system for the K were so abnormally high that the police decided to launch an investigation in May of 2024. We found out that Matthew had been clean for about 19 months, but he had also been receiving prescribed K infusion therapy by doctors to treat his depression and his anxiety. What we know is that Matthew became addicted to K, and he would also ask doctors for more, but they wouldn't give it to him. These doctors knew that Matthew was becoming addicted to it, so they chose to honor their oath and didn't give it to him. They knew what was right and what was wrong. So Matthew decided to get the K off of the streets because he wanted more. He wanted it faster and cheaper. From what we know, it looks like the people who were supplying Matthew the K were only doing this for a month before his death. According to the indictment in September 2023, 42-year-old Dr. Salvador Placencia found out that Matthew was interested in purchasing K. He contacted another doctor, 54-year-old Dr. Marco Chavez, for help in getting the K. Dr. Chavez helped Dr. Placencia get the K illegally, and Dr. Placencia brought the K to Matthew's house. I mean, how dumb and stupid can you be to be willing to risk your whole career to do this? All those years of schooling, all the money you spent going to school, it's all going to be a waste because you're going to get caught doing something you're not supposed to do. And you're going to essentially lose your job and you're going to be jobless because you're caught. And not to mention, you will be going to jail too. So, how stupid can you be? We know all this because Dr. Chavez agreed to plead guilty to one count of conspiracy to distribute K, and he admitted to selling the K to Dr. Placencia. I mean, hell, should we even call them doctors anymore? I'm just gonna call them by their first names because they don't deserve the title doctor. So Salvador brought the K to Matthew and he administered it to Matthew. You know what I mean? He, administered it to Matthew. This is YouTube, so we're trying to be nice and clean here. Before he left, he showed Kenneth Imawasa, who is Matthew's live-in personal assistant, he showed him how to administer Matthew the K despite not having any type of medical training. He just said, here you go, you can give Matthew this D that is supposed to be administered by a physician. Yeah, go ahead, personal assistant, you got it, you got this. He gave Matthew a vial of it and multiple syringes. Kenneth would facilitate administering Matthew with the K. So Matthew wasn't doing it by himself. He couldn't do it by himself, so Kenneth was doing it for him. Kenneth had been Matthew's personal assistant for years, and he watched Matthew struggle with his addiction. He knew everything Matthew was going through, and the fact that Kenneth would participate in this, knowing how badly Matthew did not want to do D's, is very, very, very sad. I know he was probably afraid of losing his job, but what's right is right and what's wrong is wrong. And why would you help someone do something that's just going to hurt them in the end? Kenneth would text Salvador asking for more K. In one text, he said, I will need to get more cans of Dr. Pepper from you today. I can come to you to make it more convenient. Throughout their messages, they would use the words Dr. Pepper as code for K. In October, Salvador continued to buy K from Mark and he would administer it to Matthew. Every time he administered it to Matthew, he would leave Matthew with vials of K. At one point, Salvador administered so much of it that it caused Matthew's blood pressure to spike and he physically froze up and he was unable to speak or move. This doctor was administering it to him in his home, in his car. I mean, God knows where else he was doing it at. After this, Mark found out that he was under investigation by the California Board of Medicine for missing K lozenges that were prescribed under another patient's name. I mean, thank God they're actually paying attention to all this stuff because they would probably be running wild out here. They'll be running wild. Allegedly, Mark was using other patients' names to obtain supplies that were given to Matthew. So you see what's going on here? He's falsifying stuff. He's getting the medication. He's giving it to Salvador, and Salvador is administering it to Matthew when none of this is supposed to be happening. When Salvador would initially bring over the K, he would administer it. But when he wasn't there, Matthew's assistant, Kenneth, would administer it to Matthew. Over 2 months, they distributed approximately 20 vials of K to Matthew in exchange for $55,000 in cash. They just saw this as a money grab. They didn't see it as anything else. They didn't see it as harming somebody or ruining someone's life or breaking the law. They just saw it as a money grab. Salvador disgustingly said, I wonder how much this moron will pay, and that he wanted to be Matthew's only source for the D's. These vials of K only cost the doctors $12, but they were selling them for $2,000 a pop to Matthew. I mean, it's really disgusting to hear doctors speak this way about people and just treat it like it's not someone's life that they have in their hands. Salvador knew what he was doing was wrong, and he even said that Matthew was spiraling out of control with his addiction. But he didn't care. Salvador was making so much money from this that he asked Mark if they wanted to start their own K clinic together. Mark responded with, interesting. As long as we are doing things on the up and up, we can start ASAP. All done legally without any shady stuff. Having them come to the clinic will ensure this. Salvador responded with, "Oh, so you don't agree with me, the method I am currently doing?" Mark says, "It's not what I think, it's what an entity like California Medical Board would view it, or the DEA. They clearly knew what they were doing was wrong, but they just didn't care." The doctor's prices became too expensive, so Matthew resorted to getting his D's off of the street instead. Matthew asked his assistant, Kenneth, to help him get K in September of 2023. Kenneth got in contact with Eric Fleming, who got in contact with 41-year-old Jasmine Sanga, also known as the K Queen, to supply the K. Matthew would give Kenneth the money or would promise to reimburse him for the K. In total, the K Queen gave Eric 50 vials of K, which he gave to Kenneth, who then gave to Matthew. Between October 24th and October 27th, Kenneth was administering approximately 6 to 8 shots per day to Matthew. During the month of October, Kenneth found Matthew unconscious at his house on at least 2 occasions. So this is not anything surprising or anything new to Kenneth. He was just like, "Oh, you're unconscious? Okay, let me do it again. Oh, you're unconscious? Okay, let me do it again." And then the last time, he ends up unalive. The K Queen is accused of selling 50 vials of K for approximately $11,000 in cash for over 2 weeks to Matthew. She is also accused of selling Matthew the batch of K that ended up ending his life. This is not her first time causing the death of someone. Oh no, it's not. In 2019, she sold D's to someone who unalived hours later from an OD. Because of Matthew's unaliving, the police raided the K Queen's home and they found a D-selling emporium, they called it, which included K, M's, the white powder, scales, and ledgers. So according to the court documents, on the day of Matthew's passing, at 8:30 a.m., Matthew told Kenneth to administer him with a shot of K. Matthew asked for another shot around 12:45 p.m. while he was watching a movie. 40 minutes later, Matthew asked Kenneth to prepare the hot tub for him and to shoot me up a big one. Kenneth gave him the shot while he was either near or in the hot tub. Then Kenneth left to go run errands. When he came back to the house, he found Matthew unalived in the hot tub. After everyone involved heard the news of Matthew's passing, they tried to hide evidence of their dealings with Matthew and distance themselves from the case. The K Queen told Eric to delete all of their messages. She didn't want any evidence of them talking. And Salvador tried to alter and falsify medical records, pretending he had a legitimate treatment plan in place for Matthew if the police requested documentation from him. But I'm sorry, Salvador. Doctors don't usually inject patients in their car or accept partial payments in cash or hand over vials of drugs. I'm sorry, that doesn't happen.
On October 28, 2023, Mr. Perry was found deceased in his home. An autopsy was conducted following his death. That autopsy showed that he had died due to the acute effects of caffeine is a controlled substance. It has some legitimate uses, but it is also used illegally. It is used by people seeking to disassociate from reality. It can cause serious health effects, serious health problems, including loss of consciousness, including spikes in blood pressure, and including respiratory issues that can deprive the brain of oxygen. For that reason, it is a drug that must be administered by medical professionals, and the patient must be monitored closely. That did not occur here. This investigation focused on who supplied the to Mr. Perry. We are sending a clear message. If you are in the business of selling dangerous drugs, we will hold you accountable for the deaths that you cause. This is nothing new for us. Since 2022, my office has filed over 60 cases against drug dealers who've caused the death of another person. These cases are known as death resulting cases. They are labor-intensive cases, and we work with our law enforcement partners, including ones represented here today, to bring those cases. Our office is a national leader in bringing those cases. They're very important because every victim's life counts. If you are in the selling business and you're selling dangerous, you're playing roulette with other people's lives, just like the 5 defendants here did to Mr. Perry. Defendants nowadays are on full notice that the products they sell could result in the death of another person. Therefore, if you're in the business and despite these risks, you continue in the business, you are pushed by greed to gamble with other people's lives, be advised, we will hold you accountable.
The K Queen and Salvador are charged with conspiracy to distribute the K and distribution of the K. Salvador is also charged with 7 counts of distribution of K and 2 counts of altering and falsifying files or records related to the federal investigation. The K Queen is charged with 1 count of maintaining a D-involved premises, 1 count of possession of intent to distribute M, 1 count of possession with intent to distribute K, and 5 counts of distribution of K. Salvador faces a maximum of 120 years in federal prison, and the K Queen faces a maximum of life in prison. A total of 5 people were charged in connection to Matthew's unaliving. Salvador and the K Queen have pleaded not guilty, while their co-conspirators have agreed to plead guilty. Mark has agreed to plead guilty to 1 count of conspiracy to distribute K. He is facing up to 10 years in prison. Eric pleaded guilty to 1 count of conspiracy to distribute K and 1 count of distribution of K resulting in unaliving. Kenneth pleaded guilty to 1 count of conspiracy to distribute K causing death. Kenneth was the person who administered the K the day that he passed away. They are both facing 25 years and 15 years in prison, which is rightfully so. The U.S. Attorney Estrada said, "These defendants took advantage of Mr. Perry's addiction issues to enrich themselves. They knew what they were doing was risking great danger to Mr. Perry, but they did it anyway." This story is super, super sad, especially getting to know Matthew and his intentions in life, for life. It's just so heartbreaking. If you want to know more about Matthew, he wrote a memoir called Friends, Lovers, and the Big Terrible Thing in 2022. In his memoir, he said, "It's weird to live in a world where if you died, it would shock people, but surprise no one." But in Matthew's death, I believe that it came as a shock and a surprise to everyone. So guys, that's it for this video. I mean, it's super sad, and I had a hard time like learning all the stuff about him and then finding out what they did, and it's so wrong. And he was trying so hard and fighting so hard. He was on the right path. He just wanted to help people. It's just so sad because he couldn't help himself. You know, let me know what you think about this video. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you